Great. Good. Okay. I'll start. Um, my name is Sonia Carey, and I try to approach this from the standpoint that you are trying to get a job in animation, and these are the things that you need to know. I introduce myself, all the jobs that are available, who I am. But the first thing you need to do whenever anybody, introduces themselves, you should already Google them. You should hook up with them on LinkedIn, get to know who the person is and know that they are valid. So that's the number one thing I teach all my students. I have been in the animation industry specifically since the first day I walked out of university, some almost 30 years ago. Older than most of you probably were even before you were born. When I grew up here in Toronto, Canada, which is where I'm chiming in from today. I went to Guelph University, and I always just loved theater, drama, technology, anything to do with entertainment. I really didn't know who or what I wanted to be that back then. I just knew I was that kind of girl who was always plugging in stuff and crawling around and trying to make fun movies with my little camera. I just stayed up late at night when I was young just to watch old movies, which was nothing that I didn't have a mentor. It was just kind of in me. I went to California after I graduated, and I was as a combination fine artist, drama major, tech person. I gravitated towards an animation studio, which I didn't even know what animation was back then. I just knew I loved cartoons. Studio offered this kind of creative position, and I was offered a position as a receptionist. And I took the position, because I knew it was a foot in the door, and I kept my eye on what the camera people were doing. That we were working on the Ren and Stimpy show, and we had a computer system that I understood was like the first digital ink and paint system for animation, and that I would never be able to understand it. It was beyond I should just do reception, but I really kept my eye on what they were doing as the camera group of, back then it was men. I was all men and me. And I really wanted to do what they were doing. So I would stay at night. I would volunteer to learn software on my own and do things on my own. And I am a self-taught person in the animation industry. I didn't go to Sheridan or, all of the schools that are geared toward animation. I had a fine art and technical and drama background, and I just kind of put all that together and made it work. So I did I made the leap from that job to a camera person, and most of my career has spent as a camera and compositing artist in the 2D animation industry. So a combination between paper and digital. And I was an artist for a long time, but I always, made sure to be on time, professional, kind mostly, and it makes you seem like a really good prospect as a leader. So no matter what job I was doing, I was always given a kind of a leadership role, which kind of naturally pushed me into production management. And then I became a head of studio for a while in a 2D setting. And then I learned, I moved into a 3D studio, and I became, now I've moved my way up to producer. So I have a really long background of moving from position to position and slowly working my way up to producer. And now I am producing my second Netflix series, and really enjoying it. But as a means of sending the elevator back down, and also creating a ceiling for myself that was no longer that glass ceiling that I couldn't get through, I started my own studio called the Animation Lounge, where I teach people, young people, old people, how to live in the animation environment, how to get a job, what jobs are available, um, and how to keep your longevity, keep a job, stay alive in this industry for as long as I have, particularly as a Black woman, where there just weren't any, and there's still, um, we still struggle with that. So I just try my best to mentor, and I'm dedicated 100% to mentoring young Black people, and people of all races for sure. But I do target some young Black people that I think have a really great potential, and I do it all through project-based learning. I still work as a harmony artist. It's my software that I love the most. I have a 2D background from the very beginning, so I'm very comfortable in a 2D setting. It's how I think, even though I'm producing 3D series. Um, when I want to be an artist, I stick in the 2D setting, and while I teach, I show every job that is available, because everybody thinks animation is just full of a gazillion animators, and it's not the case. We all can't animate. There's a lot of other things to do, and I always say, unless you want to be a doctor, there's probably a job for you inside of animation, and it gives students hope. It gives them some verification that they are definitely eligible, worthy, and able to get a job inside of this industry. And I work with 5-year-olds sometimes, and I work up to people who are in their 50s who are just trying to relearn things and get off of traditional means and into digital means. And this is so welcome to my workshop. And I'm very, when I'm doing a workshop, I'm pretty strict, because I want you to think that you're at work, and each step of the way you're doing somebody else's job. And at the end of it, we have a piece that we can use as a portfolio piece, which has been really helping people to get jobs where they haven't been able to. So my first image here, I have Toon Boom Harmony open right now, which I teach in and I work in, and I love to, on the weekends, I play around in this. It's my favorite thing. And I just have an image here of, hopefully you can see it. I'll zoom in a little bit, but the Animation Lounge is at the core of helping quite a few studios. It's, I do it quite confidentially and under the radar, but I work with young people, and particularly young Black people, and I've gotten them jobs just through their workshops in the animation lounges inside of a few studios. So I've got people working at Chorus Entertainment, at Jamfield here in Toronto, Yowza Animation. I've had a couple of people. I've had a few people who have worked on the Space Jam movie who just took workshops trying to figure out how to get a foot in the door. I've given them software training. We've done some films for Futuro Media with a crew of amazing young talent and a lot of Black talent, from editors to storyboard artists to fine artists and compositors on that. And we've got people at 9 Story, and I also sit on the faculty of a couple of schools, which are Max the Mutt and Emile Cole in Los Angeles, and just mentoring young people and teaching them exactly what it takes to have best practices and sustain within this industry. So if you all had software right now, you would jump in, which I do provide. Toon Boom is a really great supporter of mine, along with Switch Animation. And I do send out software to everybody who signs up for my workshops so that they can follow along. And at the end of it, you can produce your own, hopefully, little film and something that you can use as a portfolio piece. So it kind of goes a little something like this. And young people don't know, like there's a great, I'll zoom in a little bit if you can see it. Direction is number one. We need directors, we need art directors, but directors and people who write the stories, write the scripts, we need those definitely, especially as young and Black people and women. Directing is something I would love to see more people kind of fall into. So I give them a little basic direction. On this one, I use a bubble because the circle is a really easy thing for everybody to establish in a short time frame. and the bubble decides to leave and explore on their own. That's the kind of story that we're going to be working on. So then my next step is to tell them, okay, now we need some layout, and off of our storyboard we assume is finished, and we have a layout and we need some background paint. And because we don't have time to jump in and paint a background, I just encourage them to find something from the internet. So in this case, I have, I've downloaded a lovely background of some underwater, and that's a really great environment for a bubble to live in. So suddenly I've got people interested in background painting and layout, and what does that mean, and coming off of a storyboard and looking at things as perspective and point of view, and making really great cut-ins. So that's a whole part of the industry that I try to, spark really young kids. Like, that is actually a career choice, is a background artist. So then we move over. Hopefully you can see if people, I'm watching the chat. If anybody is like, I can't see, please zoom in more. Anything I can do to help the situation, I'm happy to do. So step number 2, we talk about 2D design and color styling. So now we know our main character is a bubble. We will hire a designer who can make a bubble. And it sounds, funny when I say it to them, but I'm like, when you think about movies that happen underwater, animated movies like, Finding Nemo, which I'm definitely using the background from today, just in case Disney's listening. A bubble designer is necessary, and how bubbles act. So I have given them the task, and you the task today, of being a bubble designer. So I'm also teaching software at the same time. So I teach them that they have to go into their drawing tab, and we would grab the ellipse tool, and we would draw a bubble, and we would fill it with our paint bucket. And that is step number 1 to bubble design. So I do take some time with the students, and I get them to learn the interface of this 2D software, because we know that artists are so powerful. If you have software knowledge, why not, if you're in between jobs, if you're underemployed, why not start making your own films from home? Become, the next YouTube sensation, or TikTok, or whatever your platform is. But if you have the software knowledge, and also knowing this software, it's the state of the art, the industry standard, so many reasons to know it. Coming in just, with a paper portfolio, or knowing that it's somebody's asking, it's Toon Boom software, and it's called Harmony. And if you're looking for a job in a 2D studio, you will need to know this software, and you can check their website and just see what it takes to get a trial version. But I do teach it definitely in my workshops, and it helps people to get jobs. So once you've got your bubble designed, I'll disable that, and I go over here to, now we know our bubble needs something to get away from. So we've asked an effects artist, and this is another kind of artist. So we've already gone through background artist, we've gone through designing and color styling, and now our effects artist has been happy to explore the node library down at the bottom here. I'm into it. And there's lots of great particles that are available inside of Harmony. So I've typed in bubble, and I've come up with this lovely bubble vortex. But you can type in, let's say fire. There's all kinds of, I'll just go right down here to the particles, and you can see all the great fun stuff that is available for you. Hi, Brittany. I just saw somebody I know joined in. And, these particles are built into the software. And once you learn how to manipulate them and use them, and I've taught a couple of people who have, been readily using them in a studio. Time savers, they're beautiful, they're really well done. So just, if you do happen to download the software, don't be afraid to explore the particles. But for this one, I simply chose the bubble vortex. And once you have it, you just drag it into your node view. This is node-based software. So all of these nodes, once you drag them in, you connect them to a composite, just like many node-based softwares like Nuke, Fusion. All a lot of CG software is kind of very similar. I feel like if you know Harmony, you can really jump into some 3D software quite easily, and some compositing software. So as long as you understand how nodes work, they feed into a composite, they're out into a display, which is on your window. That without this display, if I took it off, you wouldn't see anything. So the display just allows you to see things. And we'll get into the final render in a minute as part of somebody's job. So on this bubble vortex, which I already had one in here, I know that my main bubble that I designed, which I'll turn back on, is kind of like this, transparent blue color. And my bubble vortex, I'll go down here to the timeline view, and I'm just scrubbing with my needle. I know that I wanted my bubbles to look like my main bubble. So I'll just go back to that bubble vortex for a minute. If you were to drag in the bubble vortex, and the way it comes, we'll call it out the can, it's a canned effect. I'll disable mine for a moment with the letter D. And I will I replaced all the palettes. They do come in all kinds of different colors. I won't go through that so I don't waste too much time. But if they come in all red, or when you pull in that bubble vortex, they'll be all red, blue, and you want them to now be the same color as your main bubble. So once you learn how to manipulate these modules, these canned effects, when it's light blue like this, it means it's a group. You go into the group, and I have found the bubbles that exist in the group. And I go here to my timeline, and I know that when I click on this, they light up blue. So I know I'm at the bubbles, and when you click on them, you know that you want them to be the same color as your original bubble. So if I were to, just for fun, I'm just going to add a color in my color palette over here, and I'm going to make it red. And I'm going to fill my particle bubble with red, and I'll go back to my camera view, and you'll see if I zoom in, one of them is showing up kind of as a red color. So you can go in and customize these bubbles any way you want to, but I've customized them once I find them in my timeline, and I have made them all the same color as my original bubble. So let's leave that one in there for now anyway. And I'm just going to check a little bit of the chat just to make sure I'm not going too fast. And really, this is to simulate, for those who joined late, this workshop is something that we offer at the Animation Lounge, and it teaches you, first of all of the jobs that are available in animation besides animator. We've gone through a background designer, a color stylist, and a character designer, or prop, or effects designer. So we've gone through that. We chose to design a bubble. Our main character in this instance is a bubble. Nodes are, somebody's asking how to organize the nodes. It is actually so important, because when you work in a studio, you're not alone. As you can see, these are all the jobs that belong to people, and you pass your scene on from department to department, you need to make sure that your nodes are set up nicely like this. You don't want a whole spider web, like things down here and up in the air, and nobody will be able to understand what you've been doing. So I try to really make sure that my nodes, and you can just drag them around. I'm using a mouse today. I'm not on a Cintiq. I'm not on a Wacom tablet. I like to make my workshops mouse friendly because most people who are chiming in haven't had the chance to purchase high-end equipment yet. So I'm just using my left mouse key, and I can organize them all really nicely just the way that I want to. Somebody's asked if I can refresh the page. I can still see it on my screen. Give me a couple thumbs up if you can still see the Harmony images that I have on screen. Yeah? Okay, good. Good. Okay, so just for the people who are just jumping in, my session is about teaching you and showing you, first of all, teaching you software. It's project-based learning, and I teach you the life of a person inside of an animation studio. You do each job just to create a project at the end, and that teaches you about every job that's available inside of an animation studio besides Animator, and hopefully encourages more and more people to come forward. Our industry is in need. We need people. I am currently a producer who is always in need, always looking for good people. And if you learn a little bit of software and a little bit about animation pipelines, there's probably something inside of animation for you if you're interested. I've been doing it for a long time, and I'll go back into that at the end so I don't rattle on too much about myself. Okay, so we're at the part where we designed our background, which is this lovely, I did borrow a Finding Nemo background, if Disney's listening. And I have chosen my character today is just a bubble. So I drew my bubble. I went into the drawing tab of this Harmony software. And you can see that I drew and colored and color styled with these lovely palettes. I decided that my bubble would be a variety of these lovely blue colors. And that's a really fun job, by the way, color styling. And that exists, yet somebody's saying they recognize the background. I legally downloaded it. And I chose Finding Nemo because when I teach kids, it's Toon Boom, and the version of Toon Boom I'm using is called Harmony. And Toon Boom is definitely the industry standard. If you're going to be working in a studio, a 2D studio, I suggest that you learn this software just a little bit. And I do support anybody that I get a job in a studio. I am there 24/7 to support them. It's a big software to learn. And as artists, I know sometimes we're not the most tech savvy. And so I want to make sure that whoever I support is really successful. So color styling is just a really fun job where I'll keep this open for a second. And, let's say I have this, I've got a gradient here, but, I just kind of play with it, and you can see my bubble changing color. You kind of choose something that matches your environment. That's what a color stylist does. They have the background, they have the character, and they just have fun sliding things around and trying to make things match. So I'll leave it kind of where it was. And that's my color styling. So I'm moving through my jobs. So I'm finished my color styling and design. I drew my bubble, and I decided that my bubble would interact with a bunch of bubbles. So I decided to just choose one of the Harmony particles, which is a bubble vortex, which if you're using Harmony, down at the bottom here, I've got my timeline view, and my node library is just full of all kinds of really great stuff. And I just go right to the particles, and I just dragged a bubble vortex, and I customized. I'll show you. I broke into the group, and I customized the bubble. You've got confetti, you've got fire, you've got leaves. I have used literally all of these to cheat, because I was an artist for a long time, as a compositor, sometimes you have to come up with some cool effects and cheats. So I have learned how to control these particles pretty nicely. So once I have my bubble vortex in, I just went into the group. I found the drawing in there, which is nicely called bubbles. I went back to the timeline and I found those bubble drawings right here. There were maybe 12 of them that make up the bubble vortex, and I painted them to match my main character, which is my main hero bubble. And now I'm going to move along in my animation studio. So my effects animator is finished. Bubble vortex has been approved. I'm going to move on to my next department, which is my animators, my character animation. So earlier today, I worked out a little animation that I liked. I'm just going to disable my design for a minute. And just going to disable the vortex for a minute so you can see it. So here's my main bubble. And here's my character animation that I approved. And animation happens on these pegs. You know, once you add a peg, it means that you're going to be adding some motion. And yeah, I have worked with Storyboard Pro as well for the person who's asking. And these are all Toon Boom products. And what's really cool about Storyboard Pro is once your storyboard is finished and it's all broken out into scenes, from Storyboard Pro, you can have it nicely transition into Harmony and create your Harmony scene. So it's a really nice group of a package of software that you can learn together, and one leads into the next. So once I add my peg, I can, I'm just going to use the animation tool of choice, which everybody usually, I will hover over it, and it's called the transform tool. And you can, I can move my bubble wherever I want it to. But I'm going to leave it where it is. And once you make a move on a bubble, on your character or whatever you're moving, you can see that it lights up these keyframes. Whenever I move it, it makes a keyframe on my timeline. And I hope you can see them. They show up as these little black squares on your timeline. So those are keyframes that are made whenever I move something. So earlier today, I was pretty happy with my attempt at some character animation. So I will turn back on my bubble vortex. So I just select it and I hit the letter A to enable it. And let's see what I have. So I'll hit play. I just have a bubble that's kind of now leaving and going off on its own, and then it leaves the screen, and you're supposed to naturally wonder, what happens next? What does scene 2 look like? So then in my classes, I usually now have a scene 2 set up, and my students will create something fun for the second scene, and suddenly they have a little bit of a demo reel that they do send out, where it shows, some cool background art, it shows character animation, it shows just an imaginative thought process that is pretty fun. I'll just undo a little bit. Get back to what I liked. So my bubble is, you can see my hero bubble. I'll zoom in a little bit. 1 and 2, in Harmony is zoom in or I'm using my middle mouse key. And it is so fun and so easy, and you can just have fun, maybe I don't like where my bubble went in that moment. So I go back to my character animation and I light up the peg and I go to the keyframe. And maybe I preferred my bubble to be up here for a moment. So then I play and I just track it and see where it goes. And it's hovering for a bit, then it makes its way over to the flower or the coral, whatever that is. You can get into super high-end camera moves, which is something that we need to get more people into. Compositing and camera moves, like after the basic animation is finished, we want people to really get, you know, comfortable going into these graphs, graph editors, and refining, you know, with eases and curves and making really amazing, almost three-dimensional looking camera moves inside of Harmony. There's so much to see and learn, but I take it, you know, really slow. I take it one step at a time for my students, and I really just want them to see what's possible while they learn software, and then we move job to job. So now we've got, you know, we'll just say our character animation has been approved. Now it goes on to our compositing department. And basically our compositor's job in this moment is, well, the director has decided this blue isn't quite working for this scene. It's not sitting in the environment. So the compositor has just simply grabbed a couple of hue and saturation nodes, and I'll just connect them. And I'll connect it to our hero bubble, and I'll also connect one to our bubble vortex. And you can see the color has changed, and it's now fitting much nicer into the environment. And that's one of the things I love about Harmony, is all of the post effects that you can do. Sometimes studios go all the way back to the beginning. They work on the character color. They fix, you know, backgrounds that they're like, oh, we needed a night background, and the studio might paint another background. But if you pop in a couple of Harmony nodes, they are just so great for fixing art and color after the fact. Color correcting is so great. And again, I just go into the node library and I grabbed a Hue Saturation module, and you just drag it right out of there with your left mouse key, and I attach it here in the timeline. Let's see, just for fun, let's grab a new one, and we'll put it on our background. And let's say, you know, the director has decided they would like a night background. I'll just go to colorize and maybe go to a nice blue and make it dark. Maybe not too dark though, maybe just over here. And now I've got, you know, maybe it's the nighttime under the sea. Maybe the next scene is really scary for the bubble, and it's night and it's scary. When you add effects modules like this, you see there's two, I call them flowers for my students, but there's a working view that, like, if you hover over it, it's the OpenGL view. If you hover over the blue flower, it's the render view. In order to see effects, you must be in the render view, and you know, it already, without much effort at all, it looks pretty good. And then your director's like, good, it's ready, it's good to go to post. So I will go to the next department. So we finished our compositing, and we go down here to our final render people. And I, you know, as a producer, I have a whole team getting it out of the computer. It has to be rendered. It has to be we have to follow tech specs. So, you know, right now I'm working with Netflix. They have their own specs. Or if I'm working with Warner Brothers, I've worked with Disney. They have everybody will send you their spec sheet. Typically 1920 by 1080. You have to, you know, learn basic lingo for these kinds of things. What kind of format? Is it going to be a Targa sequence or a PNG sequence, or is it going to be a series of movies? So your render person will actually set up, and we've had people whose job is to set up these render nodes or write nodes. And when you click on anything that has a little yellow dot like this is clickable. You click on it, it opens up a properties window, and in here I've chosen, you know, my movie, check. I've got it rendering to a frames folder. I've got the name of it. Always put a version on your work so that you can always, okay, I like the first one, I didn't like the second one. I love this color spaces. It comes in really handy, but I'm just going to keep my scene color space. And I'm going to be just doing a H264. And then I will render it. So File, Export, Render Right Nodes. I render my time frame. I already rendered it earlier, so I'll just overwrite it anyway. And you can see how quick, you know, if you're just working on things at home, this is not going to take you any time at all. Just to have like immediate, I'm like that, I need instant gratification as an artist. And then you learn a second thing about Harmony, which is the Harmony database. And you know, you've been working all the time in this lovely user interface, but a really big part of being and my success inside of 2D studios is understanding what's happening behind the scenes. And I've just always been a naturally curious person and more of a you know, a technical kind of, like a weird combination of tech and art. But I always wanted to know, like, where are things, what's happening? And if you look in the database, you know, you go, okay, where did my render go to? I rendered it to something called the frames folder. So I'm clicking on my frames folder, and sure enough, there is a movie file in there. So that is where my renders are going to. But there's also, like, you know, if you just look in the database, you can see that it's your palette is in here, you know, and in a bigger studio, 18 people might need to use this color that you awesomely came up with. You can take this PTL file, a palette file, and you can copy it and paste it and send it out to the whole studio and save the day. And I learned a little bit of that when I worked on Ren and Stimpy back in the day. After a while, I think they changed, I'm not sure who decided, but the color of Stimpy's nose was not the right blue. So you can imagine you've got like 200 scenes on the floor. Do you want to have to repaint 200 blue noses? Or do you want to save the day as a technical person? And this is another job inside of the studio. And just grab that palette file and send it out to the whole studio. And when everybody opens their scenes, the blue will automatically be there. And you've suddenly saved, you know, hundreds of hours inside of the studio. And that is a whole, you know, IT people, CG soups, engineers, coding people. These are the kinds of jobs that they take care of, and they really save the day. And even if you want to work in animation and you're not artistic at all, and you just love tech, that is, I wanted to show you the database because there's a job for you as well. So that is, you know, the premise of what I do. And I have, for those of you who joined in late, I'll just put back up my, just a little bit of my, you know, it's not my success, but it's success for people who I'm dedicated to mentoring. Definitely a lot of young people of color and older people. There's a lot of, you know, ageism, aging out of this industry is very real, but I call them my recycled people. I've got my my young, beautiful Black people, and I've got a lot of them jobs who did not have any sort of experience or hope. They just needed a leg up. They're really talented. That, you know, it's a lot of who you know in this business. And I do have people now, you know, I call it just feeding studios one at a time, because our studios need people so much. And there's so many talented people without jobs. So I'm trying to bring those two together. And I've got people working at these studios currently. And I'm also sitting on the faculty for a school in LA called Emile Cole, and here in Toronto called Max the Mutt, and just dedicated to helping get people jobs and teaching people about animation through project-based learning. And I am, for those who joined in. I'm working from 5-year-olds up to 60, 70-year-olds, maybe beyond, I don't know. Anybody who wants to learn and have fun in animation. And as far as having a glass ceiling in this business for somebody like me, I have been in it for a long time. I've been doing really well, but I'm not going to say there aren't still obstacles for me. Even as a producer, there's still, seats at tables that are not for me, but I just create my own seat and I create my own glass ceiling, and I am dedicated now to becoming a creative storyteller, which really, as a woman, directing and being the one to tell the stories as a Black woman is still very difficult, but that's the next step for me. But teaching is so rewarding, and hopefully I can help some of you in the future. So that is my workshop for the day, and I'm trying to get through some of your questions if you have anything that you want to ask me. I also have an image here of just how my workshops look. I go, before COVID-19, we went live to a lot of places. We traveled to, this one's in Jamaica for Kingstoon Festival. I taught easily 60 really amazing students there. And now we do it virtually, which is just as successful. And yeah, so good. And you are looking for animators. Okay, I'm gonna grab this chat. I'm gonna connect with. It's been hard for me on my own to keep up with them, but it sounds like people are just telling their success stories about learning harmony, wanting to connect. I'll keep this chat for myself. I'll download it and then I will get back to you. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter. And I'm pretty dedicated to getting back to everybody. So let me know how I can help you. There's a newbie. You're not a newbie. You're just new to the industry. Take workshops, network, get to know people. It is a very social industry. It's who you know. I've worked with, from the beginning with so many people, from The Princess and the Frog, from the Proud Family movie, who are here today, who don't even know that I worked with them. But we're just a really big family across the globe, and make sure that you take the time to network, get to know people. That is so important. Be sociable. I'm still shy. I am such an introvert, but I make sure to get out, be seen, be heard, stretch yourself and try to get active in the business. The early steps somebody should consider while developing an animated show. I think networking and just getting your group, like your designer, people to bounce, make sure you have a good story, make sure you have people to bounce the story idea off, and somebody who can draw. Because when you're pitching and you're getting to know broadcasters, the more that you can fill in the blanks with good drawings, good artwork, be strong, come in really enjoying your story so that they will as well. That's my best advice. For production management, there's no state of the art. I'm not going to lie, we rely a lot on Google Docs. I'm using currently ShotGrid to run most of my studio work, supported with Excel, and just a mishmash of things to keep production going. I'm trying to get to all your questions. Is there any effect on not knowing frame by frame? I'm thinking what you mean is traditional animation on paper. Is that what give me a thumbs up if that's what you're talking about. Definitely if you want to be an animator, you do need to understand animation and the fundamentals of animation and be the best. I come to work every day on time, with energy, being the best. Don't don't feel entitled ever, because no matter what we look like, no matter what our skin color is, you still have to come in and just blow it away. Like, be the best that you can be as a human. That's step number one. And once you're the best, nobody is going to be able to turn you away. And if they do, you're going to have something to say about it. And Toon Boom Harmony is definitely used for animation. It's the 2D industry standard. It's used in so many different ways: background painting, color styling, effects. These are, we are hurting in this industry for people right now who understand some software and can come to work. Because we're all working remote now, especially, it's hard to train juniors who are so green. So we're definitely leaning toward seniors a lot more than we should. Just because you're working alone at home, you don't have anybody right beside you. So try and come in with some really strong project-based software knowledge. Even if you're just teaching yourself, give yourself a project. What else can I answer? What positions do you think a beginner? I didn't really touch on it, but when this bubble here, I'll disable these things for a second. Basically, adding a peg like this to my bubble, this is rigging. Once you take this away, it's just a design. But once I add a peg in Harmony, this is the beginnings of rigging, and it allows you to squash and stretch and move things. Without it, there's no movement, right? Animation is movement over time, and the rig allows you to give things movement. Whether it's in 2D or 3D, you need to add a rig, and you can do it in stages. Like, a rig can become, quite huge. Like, I could add this on top. Now I've got like a little bit of a bigger rig, but you can learn just by building a character. Start with, like, I want a character with 3 parts of an arm that move. So you're going to build, the upper arm and the lower arm and the hand, and you're going to need like a, wrist rotation and elbow rotation. Try to do like an arm at home and rig it so that it can just do like a up and down or a wave, and you'll see what it takes to begin rigging. As a beginner, like rigging right now, and I speak for Toronto, I can't speak for the rest of the globe, but we are in need of riggers, animators, background artists, but for sure compositing, rigging, and in 3D, Houdini lighting, and lighting in that kind of 3D environment where we are like, please apply, we need you. How do you usually know when you're ready to take on jobs? You should always be ready. Don't be afraid of applying for a job at any time. Just go for it. I've started, like I said, I started, they wouldn't give me any other job other than reception, and I wanted to jump right into really high-end camera work. No clue what I was doing, but I took the job anyway, and I just taught myself. Let's see, that's a node editor, correct? How complex would you say Toon Boom is? I'm thinking it's at the high end of complexity. There is a bit of a learning curve, but once you pick up Toon Boom, I'm going to say you're set. Like, you will be fine with so many other things like Photoshop or Nuke, or even the Adobe products like After Effects, Premiere. The fundamentals of Toon Boom have made my brain so in tune with layers and layering things properly. Like, you can see here, how are things layered? Okay, so things on the left or on the bottom. I know if I take off my background, it's gone, and I put it back. And if I put my background, if I layer it to the top, well, that happens a lot in studios. People will say, Sonia, my artwork has gone missing. And I'm like, oh, you just have to layer it so that it's proper, and then you'll see it. So that's, yeah, there is a learning curve, but once you pick it up, you will not regret it. It's transferable skill to so many other things. Does Toon Boom have lip sync? It does, and I didn't get too much into animating today, but there's a whole traditional side of Toon Boom. They still have exposure sheets and timing charts and all of that old-timey stuff that I don't even know if people talk about anymore. But yes, there are lip sync capabilities. I think, yeah, you're all very welcome. I'm pretty sure my time is up, and I'll see you at the rest of the summit. Hopefully we can meet up at the meet and greet, and if not, I will look for you on social media. Thank you all so much. Have an amazing rest of your festival. It's a really good one. Bye, everybody.